Well, to dig deeper into this is Max Fradwolf. He is the senior analyst at Greencrest Capital. Welcome to the show, Max. What does it say about the U.S. government, who time and time again gives out stimulus money and tax incentives to companies who then in turn lay off workers and destroy the quality of life in some small towns?
Well, I would see it as a sort of microcosm of a national and a macro feature that we've seen, particularly over the last few years. And that's a situation where what is always best for corporate profits is not always best for the communities that host these large corporate entities, many of which are far-flung in their operations, sell to Americans, but sell around the world, and increasingly are interested in the United States primarily as a place to sell products and to get various subsidies and assistances from the federal government, which are usually granted more or less no strings attached. And we see a sort of divergence, of course, here between the way the companies do and the way the towns and the communities around them do. I think Detroit may be the most famous story, but the story you tell here is perhaps even more stark, even more a tale of two very different experiences, very different economic opportunity sets.
And what then needs to be done to address this rising problem of income inequality and this system which allows corporations to flourish at the expense of the regular folks?
Well, I mean, I think many people have said it, but I would add my voice to the chorus that say we need to be a little more sensitive to stakeholders as well as shareholders in these decisions. And if we are going to use taxpayer money to subsidize some kind of ongoing procedure, process, or facility, there need to be strings attached to that money. That would be true if it's TARP money given to large banks in 2008 and 2009. And it would likewise be true if it's a grant to Whirlpool that's supposed to be taking care of the community and it's supposed to be sensitive to the jobs and needs of not just shareholders, but also stakeholders in the local community. And having that kind of poverty sit side by side with opulence is also usually a recipe for political and social unrest, as well as being poor in terms of its ability to stimulate the macroeconomy, to provide jobs, opportunities, and hope to the broadest number of people who are reliant on that enterprise.
Now, President Obama, he is now kicking up his campaign in these key states, Michigan being one of them. He's arriving tonight. So how is he going to win over votes in these places that are, in some cases, worse off than when he took office?
I think it's going to be hard for him. I think you see Newt Gingrich and Mitt Romney and to some extent Rick Santorum kind of pushing back. The President's State of the Union address really highlighted this notion that the economy is in good shape and that part of the reason for that is the various plans and policies of the Obama administration. Now, I think you can make a fairly strong argument that he inherited a situation that's perhaps was even worse than the one we're in now. That only gets you so much and that only works for so long. I would applaud RT for going and doing a story on a place like Benton Harbor. But unfortunately, that tends not to be where candidates stop. It tends not to be where the cameras and the social focus go. But the bottom line is the story that you reveal in that town is replicated in many, many towns, in many, many neighborhoods, all the way from California to here in New York. And part of what's happened is it's remained in the shadows for a long time. And leading news outlets, present company excluded, have been there's been a bit of a conspiracy of silence about those types of situations.
Obama, President Obama, he is coming back. We saw a little bit of it in his State of the Union speech a couple days ago with this populist message that helped to get him elected in the first place, this rhetoric of favoring the people over the elites. But is it going to be hard for folks in these struggling states and people like that town in Michigan to believe it?
Yeah, I think it might be quite difficult. I mean, even if you look at the debate that we saw bubble up into the State of the Union address and also Mitch Daniels' Republican response, which I thought also spoke quite a bit about economic trouble in the response to the President's State of the Union, we see a discussion about individuals paying their taxes, but we don't see as much of a discussion about large transnational corporations. In the story that we started out with this evening, it wasn't so much an individual story as it was a story of a large corporation that's not paying taxes in a community where an enormous number of the residents, a huge majority, are living off transfer payments or social program payments from the government, which means that whole town is basically giving little or nothing to the federal and state government in terms of tax revenue, but is demanding a lot of payments. And that brings up the serious issues we have around federal, state, and local budget shortfalls, which are beginning to create austerity programs even in the midst of the economic suffering that we're here to talk about this evening.
And well, this evening or tonight, we have yet another GOP presidential debate coming up. And so far, as expected, they've been talking about tax breaks for the rich. And their argument is that that is going to jumpstart the economy somehow, that might be part of the solution. But when we see cities, like Benton Harbor, which was just profiled, does that disprove that theory?
Well, I mean, if that worked so well, I don't think we'd be in the economic situation that we seem to agree on, Republican, Democrat, liberal, and conservative, that we're in right now. So we've been following more or less that line of policy prognostications for about 30 years, and it's landed us where we are now. And even if we can't always agree on the best ways to move forward, I think we can all agree that where we are now is an unacceptable place. We need to get to a place that's different. And 99 times out of 100, historically, if you want to have a different outcome, you do have to try a different method. If you don't, you fall victim to the great Einstein definition of the insane, which is to keep trying the same thing and keep expecting a different outcome.
Max, great to have you on the show as always. That was Max Fradwolf, senior analyst from Greencrest Capital.